Is it a good deal? Is it well built? Does it work at all by the time it arrives? Oh, and who sponsored this mess? Starforge seems like they might be as good an option as any other SI on the market. Of course, the best option is always the option to Segue, to our sponsor. And I gotta say, it is looking pretty good. It can even play this Segue to our sponsor. Jamie's 10-year-old ThinkPad felt like a totally different machine with a solid-state drive in it, and we're gonna throw a couple of super affordable options in the link down below, where you will also find a link to our sponsor. And he's going to help me today. First, to find out if there's anything on these, and second, to recover them with the greatest possible quality. Oh, and third, he's also gonna help me segue to
our sponsor.
But when it comes time to look at it with your kids or your grandkids, will you actually be able to retrieve it in the way that I retrieved this message?
To our sponsor.
Now, Intel doesn't want you to have this, but I do. So let's take a closer look at it, shall we? After we take a closer look at our sponsor. Now, MSI didn't respond by the time that we filmed this when we asked why this thing isn't broadly available, which really sucks. Just like this low-effort segue to our sponsor. That's right, it is time to get blue-pilled with me, folks. Or not that one. I meant like Intel Blue. Though, I am pretty excited right now. Excited to tell you about our sponsor. So you can pick up a GPU that was designed to take on NVIDIA's 4000 series instead of one that failed to take on the 3070. Just like I failed to segue to our sponsor.
This might be my worst cooling idea yet, and I know that you cannot look away. Just like you can't look away from the segue to our sponsor. This is one of the worst things I have ever done, and that's really saying something. Unlike the segue to our sponsor.
Finally, we're gonna have to figure out how to not get our fingers chopped off while we're working with it. This is gonna be a wild ride, and it's brought to you by our sponsor.
230 watts, not bad. I wanted that to be higher.
Just like I wanted to tell you about our sponsor that could easily justify adding one of these to your current GPU. It's really, really cool. Almost as cool as this segue to our sponsor. Fun fact, by the way, YouTube has already rolled it out if you want to try it, and platforms like Twitch are sure to follow suit once they finish work on their implementations. Just like I'm finished implementing this message from our sponsor.
The fact that I could, buy a cheap used car for what NVIDIA is asking for this aside, there are some other problems that we need to talk about. Right after I tell you about our sponsor, especially when a less expensive and less power-hungry card, perhaps even NVIDIA's own RTX 4080s, can do the same thing. Just like I can tell you about our sponsor.
So let's take a deeper dive together, and maybe you guys can tell us what you think is good, and also give us your feedback about what you'd like to see us work on as we continue Mark's development. And continue to tell you about our sponsor. The only thing I need to do now is use it to get all of that testing finished and compiled for the 20 mining GPU video. And oh, I guess I also need to find a way to segue to our sponsor. Spoiler alert, it's gonna get really fast and you're gonna get really surprised. What isn't gonna surprise you is our sponsor. And we were able to adapt some of their findings to help defeat the evil Lord HP BIOS. Let's walk through it, but first, let's walk through today's sponsor. So no manufacturer can get away with BSing their product specs ever again. Be afraid, keyboard makers. Be very afraid. Afraid of this segue to our sponsor. Lofty goals indeed, and as you can see, we're not there yet. But you know who is there? Our sponsor. Our sponsor's always there.
Did I tell you they threw away the boxes?
Sorry, what? Oh my God.
They're not behind me.
How are we gonna deal with that? How are we gonna segue to our sponsor?
Rendering it, waiting 3 days for it to finish rendering because you're at a university and you got a small budget.
Works just like this segue to our sponsor. Really good things, like the world's largest free repository of independent news media, educational resources, and cultural expression. Good things like this segue to our sponsor. And I, for one, live better with this incredible resource that helps me do everything from learn about black holes to fix my washing machine, and allows me to tell you about our sponsor.
Oh. Oh, there's a lot of meat to dig into here. And whatever you might think, I promise you, this video isn't sponsored by Intel, because it's sponsored by The year-over-year performance improvements that we are seeing thanks to this renewed competition, they feel pretty damn good. Your next upgrade will be worth it. Almost as worth it as our sponsor.
All the brains are actually in here. You can fit so much brains in here. Ooh, and so much segue to our sponsor. I mean, you can't have your World Championship game delayed because 1,000 people in the audience are trying to trade Snorlaxes and Ludicolo's. I don't know, these are newfangled,
yeah, that's correct.
Newfangled Pokemon that I don't know, or like drawing dirty images in PictoChat, or trying to tell you about our sponsor. It can take weeks or even months to overcome the steep learning curve on a product like this to review it properly. And I don't want to drop my rank. What I will drop though is this segue to our sponsor. It's just that it is our job to make sure that you're up to speed on the potential downsides before you commit the desk space, money, and I'd say most importantly, time that it takes to adopt a peripheral like this into your gaming routine, or to adopt our sponsor. And those that can't afford this GPU can probably afford the running cost. Either way, it was an interesting adventure. Just like this interesting adventure into Segue Land. Ahoy, it's our sponsor. So now all we have is this foam, a big pile of wood, some other assorted paraphernalia, and a great big project to turn this into something usable. But don't worry, we got a plan for that I'm gonna share with you, along with this segue to our sponsor. I dropped myself up to -50. All right, I can't wait to have an actual working one. Just like I can't wait to tell you guys that you can see the full video of us building the block board over on floatplane.com. And, I also can't wait to tell you about our sponsor. This is not the way, and we're gonna explain why and even run some blind tests to prove it. Just like I'm gonna prove that this is the segue to our sponsor. All they would have found was rave reviews from people talking about how great it is, which is validated by their own experience with how much better their music sounds. So the situation sucks. What doesn't suck is the segue to our sponsor.